All right. Well, hey, everybody. I had this idea that maybe we should let people in on what goes on in community colleges right now. There is, in our field, we often talk to each other as colleagues and get together and share ideas, sometimes borrow ideas from each other, as well as just hear best practices and check in and see how things are going. And right now is a time when, honestly, we need to do more of that probably. And so I thought, what better idea than to record these Zoom conversations, as exciting as they are, and put them out on social media? Because if you aren't sitting at home wondering what two community college presidents are talking about, I don't know what you're doing with your life right now, because it's riveting, riveting stuff. So my first guest really is Dr. Steve Robinson at Owens Community College, and it's a pleasure to have you today. Dr. Robinson, welcome to the show, I guess, if you will.
Great to be here, Joe. It's good to talk to you. We're spending a lot of time doing video conferencing these days, aren't we?
Yeah, we're becoming Zoom experts, or whatever platform people are using. This is through Zoom. I also do want to give, I guess, a shout out to Zoom before we start for getting rid of they have a limit of 40 minutes that they usually have, and during this time they've waived that, and I really appreciate that.
That's good.
We use it a lot on campus, and so really appreciate that. So to get started, tell us about yourself, and tell a little about you and Owens Community College.
Well, thanks, Joe. I'm the president of Owens Community College in Northwest Ohio. We have campuses in Toledo and Findlay, and I've been a community college person my entire career. You know what? And because we're telecommuting, I have to let the cat out. It wants out.
That's what I'm saying. This is exciting. People want to see this stuff.
Yeah, he's down on the floor. And that's something that's actually a real adjustment for me. I'm used to running, like you, running around the community, going to events, being in my office. I don't share workspaces with my pets usually during the day. But so I've been a community college person the whole time. My PhD is in English, so I started off as a full-time faculty member for 15 years. I was at Mott Community College. Got my start as an intern at Lansing Community College in Michigan. Had a long career in Michigan as a coordinator, director, dean, executive dean, and then been in Ohio for 6 years. I came as a provost and been president of Owens Community College for 3 years, but lived, eat, breathe community colleges, my whole adult life.
And was there a moment you decided that community college was your path, or at what point did that happen?
There was a precise moment. I'm one of these guys that had a conversion. I have a conversion story for you. I was halfway through a master's degree in English literature at Michigan State University. I tagged along with a buddy who was teaching at Lansing Community College down the road just to see what it was like. And it was like a lightning bolt hit me. And I'm like, this is what I want to do with my life. I mean, every classroom I had been in had been pretty homogenous, people about my age, about my background. And I was sitting there at LCC looking around at students who were older than my parents, students from different backgrounds, great conversation. I actually went back to the English department and said, I want to change my emphasis. I know what I want to do. So my master's degree is in English community college teaching, and never looked back. And so it was one of those things where there really was a day when it hit me.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's a cool story.
Thanks.
So I mean, it's obvious you're passionate about community college. This is something that you've been very clear about. If anybody knows you or follows you on social media, they know how passionate you are about that. And I want to get to that in a second. But first, I want to ask you an off-topic question. Why not?
Sure.
You are an aficionado of music, from what I can gather from you. So I have really two questions here. One is, what are you currently listening to? Like what's something you're into right now? And two, during a crisis or during a situation, a stressful situation, if you will, is there a certain thing you go back to, a certain playlist or an album or artist that you tend to gravitate towards?
I love both of those questions. Okay, and I could give any number of answers, but I have great answers. So the first is what I'm listening to now. I'm listening to a lot of live music from my high school kids. I've got a high school senior who is going to be a music major, and I've got a high school junior, and she's probably not going into music, but she's an accomplished musician. So there's a lot of piano and saxophone and flute in this house. Wow. The only reason it's not happening in the background right now is my son took the dog for a walk, and my daughter went out for a walk a socially distant walk with her friends. but usually this place is like filled with music, and so that's what I've been listening to. I love the question about the music you retreat to at times of crisis, because I am an omnivore. I listen to everything. I'm really passionate about jazz and post-punk, alternative pop, that rock and roll, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
R&B. But for me, it's Johann Sebastian Bach. I have a lifelong fascination with Bach, and I actually brought some stuff home from the office. I have a little listening station of, I have the complete works of Bach on CD, 172 CDs.
Wow.
I'm a vinyl record fanatic, so I listen to a lot of vinyl records, but actually the fidelity of CDs is really high. And so I've been listening to a lot of Bach, and last night I stayed up late and listened to some of the sacred music, like the B minor Mass. I love Bach. So that's where I've been trying to refresh with my favorite composer.
All right, cool. All right, well, I did not expect
That's more
Bach.
a bigger answer than you probably thought you were going to get.
That's great. Yeah, I love it. So another off-topic question for you, and this is just because it typically comes up. I see it on social media a lot. I think it's seasonal. I can't pinpoint the season, but it seems like a lot of hired professionals. I'm not going to say complain, but vocalize this thing is, what would be your biggest pet peeves about higher education? What just,
it's funny. Yeah, I have a few. And it's funny, I don't know if you're a Rotarian, but that's a common, like, introduce the new Rotarian question. What's your pet peeve? But for me, and it's a segue to something I know we're going to talk about. I've always had a chip on my shoulder about the way people look down on community colleges. Yeah. I mean, I've said it. I would, if your son or daughter or friend was going to take freshman composition anywhere, you would have been really lucky if they were in my classes when I was a freshman comp teacher at a community college. Small class size, guy with a PhD, passionate about the subject. So part of the whole community college stigma thing that you and I have talked about came out of a pet peeve. It was a way of being positive about something that I usually just complained about. So that's probably my biggest higher ed complaint. And I know you've said it before. I share your pet peeve about calling college students kids.
Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. And it's funny though, you see people say, and I agree, I mean, we share a stigma pet peeve too. You hear people say kids when they're talking about college students, and you almost instantly see on their face, they realize they shouldn't have called them kids. And they'll say something like, well, I call them kids because my kids are older than them. And it's like, last year we had a student here that was 82 years old. So
right.
Unless you have students that are older than that, or kids that are older than that, then you just can't call them kids. And even then, I wouldn't see it as justifiable. But anyway, that's,
the only place I see, Joe, is that in the last few years, being a provost and being a president, I was not very connected to athletics before now. There is a culture among coaches to call adult athletes kids. And you hear it, sportscasters do it. That doesn't mean I'm okay with it, but I've just noticed that there is kind of a culture within athletics, like, oh, he's a really tough kid, or he's, that kid is really talented. But I'm still not down with it.
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to stop it, but it does, little by little, people stop doing it. So, your pet peeve about ending the CC stigma, the community college stigma, has really taken off, I think. I mean, that's kind of how I discovered you and how we got to know each other. But I want to talk about how that's going. What kind of when that began and what's happened since. Just give an update on it.
Sure. Well, right now with the pandemic, quite frankly, without being very formal about it, I've kind of set it to the side a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed on Twitter, I'm really not using that hashtag a lot right now. I think everybody kind of wants to be laser focused on how we help our students and our communities through this COVID-19 piece.
Right.
So, I think the campaign's been going great. Turned a year old back in February, right before this whole thing hit, and I think we have, earned a lot of followers and friends who agree. that it's really time to actively change the public perception of community colleges.
Right.
I've been lucky in that people have put a microphone in front of me or given me an opportunity to write, op-eds or something like that. A lot of places. And you've heard my three-part theory about this. One is that there is a real stigma against community colleges. Mm-hmm. Two is it's got nothing to do with our quality. Your institution, my institution, we do amazing things, great transferable job-related experiences. And the third piece is that the only way we're going to change is if we call it out and really draw attention to it as a stigma. But to answer your question about where it is right now, in this crisis, I haven't been actively doing the same kind of drumbeat. Sure. But usually before then, I would, as I read higher ed press and was going through my media diet, whenever I found a positive nugget about community colleges, I would take a sentence or two, put that hashtag next to it and try to amplify those stories. That's been a little bit on hold as we, I don't know about you, but I've never worked harder in my professional life than I am right now. This is absolutely unprecedented. There's so much to do for our students and our communities that I'm looking forward to when we, get back to a little semblance of normalcy. And you can count on me. I'll pick it back up and keep fighting that fight.
Yeah, I have no doubt. And really, you've been a champion for that. I mean, that's something that many of us have thought of. And, I really despise the term junior college. And, it's that kind of thing that really has fed into that stigma throughout the years, that it's not real college or not as good as four-year universities or whatever. And that's just not true. And I think that, you're right. There's a time for that. You've been amazing at it, of course. And I think that.
Well, so have you. I mean, you were on that. I think one of the first podcasts we did. It's really turned into dozens and dozens of people, and I think we've made some headway. And here's the thing: when we come out the other end of this crisis that we're actively managing right now for our students and our communities, I think that it's way too early to tell. But I think that there will be more of an outcomes-based look from students and families about what they get out of post-secondary. You already see people writing about folks maybe wanting to do college closer to home, which is that's who we are. So once we get everybody safe and make sure that the health systems don't crash in our communities, I think we're going to be really well positioned to be, to go up a couple rungs on the ladder in post-secondary.
I think so. I agree with you. That sounds good. So, speaking of this crisis, talk about things that Owens is doing, that you're doing there to respond to this.
Well, I could talk about that forever. Your life is probably completely different than it was just a couple short weeks ago. I mean, if you're a college president, your inbox is usually, community meetings, department meetings, Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, going all over the community, and all that's gone, right? Yeah. We meet people and shake their hands and give PowerPoints and go to podiums and talk, and that's canceled. That's shut down. But what we have done is, say my senior leadership team, we usually meet once a week. Last 2 weeks, we've met every day. Mm-hmm. We're meeting every day like this on a video conference, and we're probably spending more time doing tactical work than we usually do. Usually we're doing big picture strategic stuff, but we have had to pay much more attention to how we take care of our students, getting the semester all through alternative delivery, take care of our employees. One of the things we've done is try to pay really close attention ahead of time to some of the federal legislation. Right. We went ahead and the 80 hours of a COVID-related leave that was approved in the CARES Act, we actually brought that online before it was passed, so that would be available for employees. And then communicate. We have been trying to just get our, when we do make decisions and come up with new procedures, trying to get them out to people early and often. And I'm sure it is exhausting for our campus community. I feel that a lot of what I do when I'm, recording a web video or doing a blog entry or sending out an email is like, look, I know we're sending you a lot of information. I don't want to overload you, but don't want to leave any information out.
Right. So how are you keeping engaged, keeping in contact with those employees, with your students? I mean, what kind of things are you doing there?
Well, we're pretty fortunate at Owens that we had just onboarded the Microsoft Teams technology, which is kind of, Skype for Business 2.0.
Mhm.
And we hadn't really been using it, so that came just in time. We were running our team meetings off of that. Most of my community boards are still meeting either through Skype or Zoom, and it's funny, I think I have 3 or 4 of these platforms going because of, depending on which community group it is.
Yeah.
And then it looks like you're on campus. Our campus is shut down with a couple of small exceptions, but I have been going into the office just to make sure that the employees who are on campus, know that they're not alone, and it's never enough, but, drop some cookies by or something. I took one department an Ohio flag, just to be on campus. And also my wife's a working professional too. She's the HR director at the museum here in town. And so sometimes we need to get out of each other's hair, but we're being good. We're doing what we're supposed to do by working from home. And so mostly it's through email and video conferencing, Joe, how we're staying together.
Okay. I've seen the you mentioned the Ohio flag. I've seen a lot of things on social media through you basically about flying flags of there. How's your state response been? Your government, seems like your governor is pretty active in this process.
Yeah, I'm very, very proud of our governor. So Governor Mike DeWine, who's a lifelong public servant, he was our attorney general, he was a U.S. senator, he's been in state government for a long time. This is his first time as governor. I think when the dust clears, you'll see that he and just a handful of other governors just jumped out ahead into leadership. He took the unprecedented step of having us all go to remote learning, alternative delivery in higher ed, even before he did the stay-at-home order. And he's been a great example of what I would call science-based leadership. He put together a learning organization in his cabinet where it was the ideas and the science that was going to govern things, not what. Because can you imagine? He's the one who really pulled the plug on March Madness. Two of the big hubs for those tournaments were here in Ohio, I think, or at least one of them was. Mm-hmm. And I think his strong action kind of moved us into the flatten the curve mode. So every day at 2:00, the governor has a press conference, and our director of public health, Dr. Amy Acton, is this is her field. I mean, this is what she does. She taught this kind of global public health pandemic preparedness for years, and has been a great leader. So we've been fortunate in Ohio to have a strong governor taking the lead.
It seems like it. And I'm on social media a lot, but man, just, you see things from all the community college leaders that I follow and others about their state response. And Ohio seems to be kind of leading the pack there. It seems it seems to stand out a lot. I mean, I obviously follow you, but it just, when you look around the states, you see, some people complaining about their government response and others, saying how great they are. And I think that, it's commendable.
Well, I think, thanks. Well, I think one thing about it is, the governor quickly realized that he had to take urgent action and was gonna, get in front of the camera and tell the truth and say, look, this is going to be hard. I mean, it's hard to close down a campus. We've got students who we're the best thing that happens to them all day, right? This is the best internet they're going to have. It's probably the best meal they're going to have. It's probably the most, kind and caring human contact they're going to have all day. And the idea of shutting that face-to-face interaction down, we didn't want to do it. Yeah. But we have kept our libraries are currently open for Wi-Fi access, and we've got our food pantries are open by appointment. But the governor asked us to do something hard, and so I think that's why you see a lot of our respect for that.
Mhm. All right. Well, what kind of advice would you give community college presidents during this time that maybe, I don't know, that just what kind of advice would you give? I don't know how to open that, but what would you think?
Yeah, you know, a lot. I mean, the one I was fortunate enough early on, and I wrote down the date. It was on the 13th of this month, March 13th. I did a blog entry with that topic. You know, here are 5 pieces of advice to community college leaders, and the Community College Daily picked it up and wrote about it. So I had 5, and one of them was we got to lead with what we know about student equity on this, and that's what I was talking about just a minute ago. We serve a very important group of students, and by stopping the face-to-face interactions, that will disproportionately impact some groups of students more than others.
Mhm.
I mean, you know this from your students. There's some students who, you know, they have the fastest internet. They live in a big house. There's going to be food in the fridge. That's not the case for everybody. So as we go forward and manage the crisis, the first thing I said is take what you know about student equity, outcomes, learning outcomes in the classroom, and apply it to your response. And we've been trying to do that. The second one is about the students and employees, and that is about stress. And you probably have seen it, man. This is a stressful environment.
Mhm.
It's probably been tough on your team. It's tough on our team. It's tough on me. Um, and I think, you know, finding ways to step out or take a break or vent or get some help was really important.
Right.
The third one was to be patient with people who are grumpy, and they're going to be grumpy people who, you know, don't want to do this hard thing or really having a hard time. And then I think that the last two, the number 4 was let's pay special attention to the folks in our organizations who have to deal with complaints. I'm talking about the people who monitor your Twitter feed and Facebook comments, and they're gonna, and it's only started, Joe. I mean, I think that, you know, the frustration, they're gonna be students and families and community members unloading on our people because they're scared, because they're frustrated, and we need to care for those people who have to listen to those things. And then the last thing we already talked about is like realize that your state leaders are doing the best they can. That's really easy for us because our state's been such a leader. But for the folks who are listening or watching, if your state wasn't out front or they don't have the things that you need at the ready, they're good people too, and they're trying, and got to kind of meet them where they are.
Right. Okay. Yeah, your advice that went out in that article, we shared it all over campus, so we really appreciate
Oh, cool, cool, cool.
Mhm.
And the other people added some great things. I mean, I'm no great font of wisdom on that. It's just something that occurred to me like about 3 days in. I'm like, oh wow, I've already learned these things, and maybe I should share them.
Okay.
That's what happened.
Well, so we're about out of time, so I want to give you the last
Oh,
2
great.
minutes. So take it away.
Well, I mean, I'm lucky like you. I mean, if you're a college president, you get a lot of opportunities for people to sit and listen to you talk, right? If I give, so I have an idea that I do want to share with you. And most folks who make it into a leadership position have read Jim Collins' Good to Great. If you haven't and you got some time, it is a classic leadership book. You know, and like any leadership book, not everything in there is something I completely agree with. It also is very focused on corporations. Jim actually had his team write a monograph afterward called Good to Great in the Social Sectors, which is a great thing for people in public higher ed to look at. But during this crisis, and it goes back to why I'm such a big fan of our governor, Mike DeWine, is there, Jim, in the book, he describes something called the Stockdale paradox. And that is simultaneously having faith that everything's going to be okay, that you're going to get through this, but also confronting brutal facts, like really being honest about how tough things are. And from your perspective, from my perspective, we know our institutions are going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And you have to lead knowing that. But you also have to realize what an incredible blow this is. I mean, it's just, there are people, there are employees at your college, at my college, who are worried about the future. They're worried about their jobs. Our students are worried whether they can complete. And you can't sugarcoat that. So you have to simultaneously have faith that everything's going to be okay, but be really brutally honest about how tough it is. And I've been doing this for 27 years. It's never been tougher. This is the toughest.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that and your time today. This has
Yeah.
been really great and really being my first guest on this. We'll keep it going and have more as we go. But just want to really appreciate all you're doing and for your students and your leadership among community colleges in general. We really appreciate all you do.
Well, thanks a lot, Joe. I got to return the favor. You were a guest on my podcast. I got to be a guest for you. And thanks for all you're doing. Hey, and most importantly, keep yourself and your family safe during all this, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. And you too. Stay well, my friend.
All right. Take care, Joe.